In our market, the primary types are manufacturing and distribution. I break it down to two. I do not like to consider R&D and showrooms industrial. They're very difficult to lease. They're not exactly office and they're not exactly industrial, and they've been overbuilt. So a manufacturing building can have a very high ceiling or it can be somewhat lower. A distribution building usually has a very high ceiling, but can be somewhat lower. They are, I guess the best way to put it is industrial real estate is just a bunch of boxes. Picture a big box. There are small boxes and there are large boxes. Square boxes, rectangular boxes. Some boxes have an angle cut off so that it's triangular. Some boxes are tall, some boxes are short. Some boxes have many docks, some have very few. So using that box example, showrooms are low boxes with too much office. R&D, same thing. You can do light assembly and you can do manufacturing in a very high ceiling. Intuitively, tenants don't like manufacturing in very high ceilings because they feel like they're wasting space, the empty space above the machine all the way to the top of the ceiling. But usually those operations do have some form of storage. Usually it's two forms of storage. The perfect building for a manufacturer lays out on the left side of the building as you're facing it is where the raw material comes in. In the middle is where you manufacture your products with the raw material. And then on the right side is where you store the finished product. The ideal layout is having docks all the way along the line so that your operation flows from raw materials to manufacturing to distribution. You don't have that in any of the other kinds of space. Flex is the same thing as showroom space. They're just different words for the same thing. I would not ever buy a flex building. I would not ever buy an R&D building. They're extremely hard to lease up. They're already cut up into different rooms and different operations. And anyone who walks in is going to say immediately, I don't understand where I'm at, get me out of here. So we like a wide open warehouse that can be used for manufacturing or distribution. And we like to have docks lining the building on the left, on the right, in the middle. And the office can be any place. It doesn't make any difference. What the tenants tell us is, I don't really care about the office. I make all my money in the back, where I make my product or I distribute my product. The office is just something I have to have. So it doesn't really matter that much where it is. As far as heavy manufacturing, we don't get into that. That's when you go to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and you drive over the bridge and you see at night all those lights and all those fires and all that. Gary, Indiana, we're not in the steel manufacturing business. It's light manufacturing. People put pieces together. They may do some painting. They may do some coating. They're different operations. They do some welding, but that's a little piece of it. So no, we stay away from everything except basic, I would call it nuts and bolts, wide open boxes. It's just a matter of how many docks there are and how tall the ceiling is. As far as land and build-to-suits, I've probably done about 15 or 20 build-to-suits and ground-up developments. It's a lot of work. You have to work with the village. It's political. You have to make presentations in front of the village board. Then you have to get all kinds of permits. You have to figure out all this engineering. And then you're building something at the highest cost there is, because all the products and all the labor today is higher than it's ever been. And it's always higher than it's ever been. So whenever you build a brand new building, it's always the top of the market cost. You buy an existing building, you can buy it for below market, or below the replacement cost, which is really important. Cold storage is something that's very specialized. We don't do a lot of that. But I'll tell you what is interesting, where there is storage that's cold, is in food manufacturing. I would say that in today's market, at least 20% of what we see is some sort of food distribution or manufacturing. Everybody has to eat. And they do have coolers and they do have freezers, but that's not the same as cold storage, where they store in bulk 40 feet high in freezers. That's a different kind of building, and it's a different business. That's a business. People who own those cold storage facilities, they're running a business. It's if you own them as an investor, you have to make sure you know who your operator is, because it's extremely expensive to operate that. If your operator gets in financial trouble, just the utilities alone are the same cost as the rent. You don't want one of those empty. So we stay away from those. That's a specialized area that other people are very good at, and we're not going to travel into their area of specialty. Data centers, very much like cold storage, extremely specialized. You look at one of those buildings, and on the roof and all the way around, they have these HVAC units, like hundreds of units. It's a business that 2 or 3 specialized companies focus on, and we leave that to them.